So I'm here with, technically you're my client because I sold you this house and a couple other condos, but really you're my friend.
Right.
So I'm here with Roberta, my client friend, who behind us, you know, we're here to show you this because I think this is interesting. I've never seen how they drill drains in window wells. But if there's not one installed, an inspector usually will say to you, you should have a drain in here because, you know, it might be a water issue. So there were water issues, right? I mean, when we bought this house, we knew there were some past issues, and we tried our best to address them. But that's one of the things about being around here is it's really hard to know where water comes from and things change in the topography. And so, anyway, so tell me a little bit about how we got to this point, if you.
All right. Well, we bought the house 4.5 years ago, I guess it is, and like Corey said, we saw evidence of some water damage at one point. And first we were just going to be proactive. And so I did several things. One was that I was told that the landscaping needed to be sloped because one of the reasons potentially there was water was because our landscaping was kind of on a hill. And so we did that, and we spent the money to do that.
Yep.
And that didn't really do too much, but we kept on hearing that the soil was just absorbing all of this water and then it was coming in. By the way, once a year, maybe twice a year when we had heavy rains or rains for days is when we had problems. And the water would seep down the wall.
And then you would see like on the floor here a little bit, right?
Yeah, and so we just had towels and we knew we had a problem, and we got a pump, and then we had new windows put in, and then we had new covers put on the window.
Right, I was gonna say, I remember you putting covers in,
yeah. And all of these things were good. I'm happy that we did them, but they didn't solve the problem. My husband and I are in our 70s, and so this was just getting more and more serious as to what we were going to do. The last rain, which a month or so ago, when everybody had that awful experience and several people had water in their basement, I went to Lowe's and Menards and Home Depot like everybody else in this area. And the lines were, you know, just around the block, and we got a little pump, and when we pumped the water out, but we just thought, how much are we going to be able to keep on doing this?
I've had that, and it's awful to just keep on having to do that.
Yeah. So what we finally did was we said we're going to call the waterproofing, and this was Corey's recommendation, why don't you just call waterproofing companies? So we did. We got several bids. One just really had suggested this, but they did a proposal that was just really long. It was several pages long, and it was good, better, best. And this was good. Better and best were things that we didn't need.
Yeah, that really didn't like address the issue, or there was no water problems at those parts of the house, which is like, yeah, it might be good to do them, but you know, do you really spend the money to do that if they're not where the problem is actually happening? So, you know, this seemed to be the better choice to do.
Well, and Corey warned me that, you know, some of these quotes were going to be many, many things that you don't need. So I knew I was going to get the quotes and call Corey right away and say which ones of these are realistic.
Yeah.
So we finally got a quote that was going to put drains in each one of the window wells. And they assured me that they wouldn't have to tear up the house at all. But when the workers got here, they would have had to dig about another 1.5 feet. They weren't equipped. They didn't have the machinery or the personnel to do that. And so they basically said, let's do this, which will be cheaper for you. And it was about $1,000 or $1,500 cheaper.
But that is one of those things where, sorry to interrupt you, where, you know, things happen where a salesperson will come out and quote you something, and then when they get out or they open your walls, then they'll see something where they're like, we just can't do it that way. And it's not always of a fault of, they're not trying necessarily to, like, you know, pull one over on you. Sometimes it just happens. I mean, sometimes they are, but, you know, a lot of times that's just a product of what happens when they open up your walls and find out. So yeah, I actually have, Roberta, I have pictures I'm going to put in the video of how it looked like before they put this blue on here and the hole that they drilled. I should still have them. Anyway,
Oh.
so yeah, so so then they did this, right? They drilled through this well, you were saying?
Well, there was a drain that drilled down to the ground, as I understand it, and then each of the windows, and then there are 2 windows in the storeroom. It was actually ultimately a good thing that they did this, because they noticed that we had a crack in our foundation, and I don't know if it was contributing to the water issue or it would have eventually contributed to the water issue. But we were really happy. Now, of course, we have to have the expense of somebody getting some drywall
Yeah.
and putting this back together
Right.
for us, but
Which becomes another contractor and stuff. But
Right.
back to this crack, so this is actually the proper way to seal one of these cracks, and they're not all that uncommon. I mean, I know sometimes you hear like foundation crack and it sounds like a big deal, but this is really not uncommon. This is the best way to do it, and you'll notice it's underneath the window here, and these are points because it's where water gets. And so this now having a drain, there's not going to be water just pooling up here, and you shouldn't have, or would hopefully alleviate some of the cracks forming in the foundation. But that's something that happens around window sills a lot, where you get these cracks. And when you buy a house, you have no idea, because this is drywall, right? So like you
Right.
can't just open up the drywall when you inspect a home. So you really have no idea sometimes that this has happened, like these cracks are in your house, unless you went and opened up the drywall when you purchased one, which is just part of buying a home. So
Yeah.
so they found this here, yeah.
Yeah, they found this here, so they put in the drain for 4 window wells, because we had water in the storeroom as well, and then they connected them to our sump pump, and they're going to come back. My husband was very adamant about them coming back to test the system, because they can't test it the day that they install it, because the silicone is still wet. And so it needs 3 days to dry, and they're gonna come back. We had to make another appointment with them, and they're gonna, I guess, flush water and,
Yeah.
and make
That's
sure
really
that it
smart
works.
when Roberta told me that, because they come back, they say they did it, and you don't really know if it's working or not. So
Right.
so they actually tied this into an existing sump pump system. So I don't know what they would have done if this sump pump wasn't already installed in the house, but there's a drain tile that this runs, and then this runs along the house into the sump pump in the other room. So that's what you do if you have window wells and there's no drains in them. This is what you do.
Yeah. And it just made such sense once they suggested that we get drains, because it was the window wells that were filling up. The water would fill up to the top.
Wow.
And my husband was out there with a bucket, just trying to get rid of the water.
Yeah.
And it was just nuts. Yeah.
So one last question I want, and so people have an idea, like a range. Are we talking $20,000 for something like this? No, right?
Well, the original quote, which was to do it on the outside, not tear this wall, was about $4,000.
Okay.
But when they did it this way, it was actually cheaper, although we still have the expense of putting the wall back together. But it was $2,666. So
Okay.
it was under $3,000.
Okay. Wow. So under $3,000 to
Yeah.
do this. So, all right. Well, thank you, Roberta, for
You're
telling my
welcome.
clients about this and telling everybody about this. So, a lot of times there's ways to fix water issues in your basement, and sometimes it's not as expensive as you think.
Yeah.